Hello and welcome to the BC School Sports Governance Proposal Q&A. My name is Rick Thiessen and I have the privilege of being the president of the board this year, and I'm joined on this video by Brent Sweeney, the vice president, and Anne-Marie Watts, a fellow board member. Our objective in this presentation is to just do a quick overview of the proposal and then address questions that have arisen over the various presentations and correspondence we've received as a board and as the office. We've had great dialogue over the last year, and we are hoping that over these last few weeks before the AGM that you have all the information that you need. So as you know, the goal around this discussion is to clarify things that it may have been miscommunicated or misinterpreted. We've, as I said, have received a lot of information, and we're hoping that you will have everything you need to make an informed decision. So you might be asking, or you may have wondered, why a governance review? One of the things that became evident 3 years ago as a result of a strategic plan was that you as the members felt like the governance of this organization needed a refresh, an update. Another factor that has contributed to this is that the gaming branch over the last couple of years has been questioning our use of gaming funds sent directly to commissions. And I'm not sure of the structure of our organization being adequate enough. So an ad hoc governance committee was tasked with investigating various jurisdictions throughout North America, look at how they operated and functioned in terms of overseeing school sport. And they began their work just over 2 years ago. And then a year later, in January of 2020, they made the first presentation to the board. Over then the next year, that model that was proposed to the board in January of 2020 has then been tweaked and updated as a result of the dialogue we've had with many of you and many other stakeholder groups. And so the version that will be voted on May 1st, we're calling version 3.1. And that has incorporated many of the changes that you've asked for. So you can see the various committees. I won't go over these in detail at this point, but it will come up later. The Board of Directors continues, but the biggest change is the Legislative Assembly that will meet a couple of times a year, and then you see the policy committees and the operating committees. So just specifically about the Legislative Assembly, it's the decision-making body, the main policy-making body for the organization. It will meet twice a year, and those meetings will most likely carry on over a couple of days. The objective is to allow for more substantive discussion and a deep dive, a deep look into programs, policy, and sustainability and growth of school sport. And it's, as you can see by the composition, it's really intended to create a decision-making body with appropriate geographic, gender, knowledge, and perspective diversity in a way that brings together key stakeholders that have been far removed from making decisions in BC school sports. You can see that each zone of the 9 zones in the province has 3 representatives, and then the partner organizations each have 1 representative, and those partner organizations include the superintendents, school trustees, parent advisory councils, principals and vice principals, Ministry of Education, Tourism, Arts and Culture, BCTF, FISA, and Indigenous Sport. And then each of the policy committees, the chair also will be a part of this Legislative Assembly. The Board of Directors then specifically will have 9 members. By law, any organization like ours, as a society, is required to have a board, has a fiduciary obligation, which is intended to look after those responsibilities that you see on your screen. And the composition of the board will be a variety of representatives from the different areas of the province, as well as a mix of genders, a mix of roles and responsibilities at the school level, as well as people from various organizations as well. And then we have the policy committees include the rules committees, which there will be 3, 1 for each season of play. And these committees will look at things like technical rules for the games, field of play, specs, uniforms, equipment, and so on. And so there will be representatives from each of the sports in those seasons who will serve on those rules committees. 1 male and 1 female from each sport. All committee members on those committees must be employed by a member school or school district. Then there will also be a tiering and sport evaluation committee, which will be comprised of a chair, someone who will be on the board of directors as well, and then representatives from both the sport championship committees, as well as the Superintendent's Association and principals and vice principals. And this committee will be charged with evaluating tiering and conducting research to evaluate the addition or removal of sports and make recommendations to the Legislative Assembly. Brent is going to take over from this point for the next couple of slides.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. So the next slide that we're looking at here is dealing with the operating committees of BC School Sports under the new governance proposal. And these committees have the responsibility of assisting in the execution of some of the functions that BC School Sports provides to their membership. Each of these committees will have a chair with a specific task or mandate to execute under the guidance of and support of BC School Sports staff. So the primary difference between operating committees and policy committees is that they will not be able to send a motion to the Legislative Assembly. One of the things that that came about from feedback was that members of the of these operating committees will not have to be members employees of a school district. So this is an opportunity for coaches who are community-based to provide some of their insight and assistance to the new governance proposal. So there's a number of different committees that are there. There's championship host committees, ranking committees, the sport advisory committees, history and archives, as well as scholarship. And so those committees will all have very specific jobs that they do. One of the changes that has come about with a result of feedback from some of our discussions with commissions was the creation of the sport advisory committees. And so this is something that we have added through later additions to the proposal. And so the SACs will appoint their members, representatives to the policy committee, so for rules and championships. And their function is going to be to provide some feedback from zones. And so each zone under our umbrella will appoint a member to each of the sport advisory committees. So this is something, again, that came from feedback that we received and was added to the proposal.
Okay, so now we want to move into addressing some of the specific questions that have been that have just come up over the various conversations and meetings that we've had. We're going to proceed through about a dozen questions, and Anne-Marie and Brent and I will each answer some of them. And so we'll just move between the questions in that way. So the first question that has often been asked is, what are the benefits of this governance change for student athletes? And I think I would say the biggest change will be felt that the experience of those athletes and teams that make a provincial championship will become more consistent. Rather than a significant difference from sport to sport, which many athletes experience, especially those who play multi-sport or are involved in a variety of sports. We would like to see the championships be far more consistent. We're also believing that this proposal will increase support for schools and coaching. Those staff members or volunteers who are involved in coaching teams, we believe that this governance model will provide more support to them and will offer a better experience for them as well.
So the next question is, will sports-specific voices have a platform to be heard? So remember that each sport will have a sport advisory committee, and the members on this committee will have a large influence on shaping their individual sport. These members can be part of various policy committees, and that includes the rules policy committee as well as championship committees. Sport advisory committees have regular meetings, and it's a forum where coaches can express their voices as well and give suggestions.
Next question that we received was, what will provincial championships look like in this new structure, and will there be cuts to championships? The board has been very clear that the intent is that our BC School Sports Championships will very much look in the future as they have in the past. One of the things that we have recognized from our commissions is that many of them have put on very impressive events, and so not only do we want to continue that, but we are hopeful and open to having those individuals who've worked on those championships in the past continue to do so. One of the things in developing our budget is that we have created a budget for each championship event. And this has been looked at by taking the numbers from previous championships. So in terms of being cuts to championships, we have planned and we've budgeted 4 championships to continue in the future as they have ran in the past.
Next question also revolves around finances, and the question specifically is, what is the impact on the budget going to be? Will there be additional fees to member schools? So it's clear that the BCSS budget will increase dramatically. It's currently at about $700,000 per year, and that will increase to approximately $2.2 million using the information that we've been given by the various sport commissions. One thing that will definitely bring about a change is that we will inherit the cost of wrestling and football insurance, which is roughly about $10,000 for each sport. So that will automatically result in an increase in dues. But the other thing that we anticipate is that there will be an increase in sponsorship as we have more of a unified voice around school sport in the province. And so we believe we can leverage this unified approach and approach corporate sponsors and others who are interested in supporting student athletes. And so our commitment is to continue to maintain the lowest barrier possible for organized sport for student athletes. One of the things that we hope that this governance model will do, and including provincial government representatives on the Legislative Assembly, is to begin to have them understand that BC is the only school sport governing body in Canada that is not core funded by their provincial government. Once we believe that once our provincial government has a better handle on that and sees that there could be direct funding from the provincial government. That is our hope.
How will motions come forward, and will schools be able to provide feedback and AGM motion topics? Motions can come from many different ways. The first one is the zones. We have 9 zones, and each zone, through their own meetings and AGMs, can bring forth motions with their 3 representatives that are on the legislative body. The board can bring forward a motion with the majority of votes from its members. Policy committees can also bring forward motions with the majority vote from its members. And remember that the Sport Advisory Committee will have members on the policy committees. And so motions can also come, I guess, indirectly from sport advisory committees through their chair or another member that sits on a policy committee if they have the majority vote on that policy. And lastly, the stakeholder partners with written support from at least 2 others can also bring forward a motion.
One of the questions that we've heard numerous times in the last 12 months is, why did the board decide to bring the proposal to a vote this year instead of waiting for another year? Obviously, 2020 was a year unlike any other. And originally the proposal was to come forward at the AGM in the spring of 2020, but clearly that didn't happen. What we believe, though, is this past year, in the absence of sport, as ironic as it is, we actually have had more time to talk about the proposal and talk about what school sport could look like. And so in the many, many meetings and conversations we've had, the board believes that we've actually been able to dedicate more time to discussing the proposal, more time to consider various suggestions for changes, which we have incorporated in many cases. And so we think it has been good timing for us, and we believe that the AGM, the vote on May 1st, will be one that people should be prepared for. And then just finally on this one as well, we are obviously anticipating that school sport will start up again this fall. And so the break that we've had from April of 2020 until September of 2021 has given particularly the office staff an opportunity to dive into the transition of what it will look like under the new governance model. And so we feel that we are adequately prepared for that transition as well.
Another question that we've heard around provincial championships is, where will money go from provincial championships if the championship is profitable? So first off, very few of our championships are actually profitable. While some of our commissions do maintain a bank balance, it should be noted that in the last 5 normal non-COVID years, BC School Sports has provided $970,000 in grants and expenses to the commissions. So this doesn't even include the bookkeeping service that BC School Sports provides, free of charge to 11 of the commissions who take advantage of that service. The championships that do tend to be profitable are school-based championships, where the host can generate local sponsorship revenue. So for school-based events, there will be a revenue sharing agreement with the host school that would see a direct benefit to the host school for hosting that championship. For events that don't have a host school, any profits that would be made would offset losses in other areas or events. The goal has always been to run championships at a break even and to provide a great experience for our student athletes.
Hey, will BC School Sports consider sport-specific sponsorship opportunities? And the short answer to that is yes. Now, we will be taking a multi-sport approach to corporate sponsorship, but please note that if a sponsor or a donor wants to give to a specific sport, then absolutely their donation will go to that specific sport. So coming out of the pandemic, there's questions about coaches. Do we have a plan to improve coach recruitment, development, retention across the province? So please note that right now the board is discussing a campaign for the fall to get people in communities back to supporting their local athletic programs. The board is also continuing to work to develop new coaching education courses And this is being launched later in May of 2021. We've also started the CAT training, concussion training, that the membership approved. So all coaches will be doing that before they can take part in coaching with BC School of Sport. And so, yeah, just trying to really develop opportunity for coaches and coaches development. Will BC School Sport continue to offer sport-specific scholarship? So this is one area where we're still looking to get feedback. Any organization that receives gaming grants or gaming funds are basically not supposed to be giving out scholarships. Now, this has been a little bit of a gray area, and so we're just waiting for feedback from the gaming funds to see if that can continue. And that, whether this model goes through or not, needs to be addressed at the BC School Sport and the commission level.
Another question that we've received is around the smaller sports, wondering if we plan to eliminate the small sports due to lower levels of participation. So I want to be very clear that the board does not have any plans and has had no discussions around eliminating any sports. Obviously, there's an ongoing evaluation of the money that's spent, but we have not had in the last year and more that I've been a part of this process, any conversations about this. The Tiering and Sport Evaluation Committee that is a part of this proposal, they will be tasked with that, and they may make recommendations to the governing body, and it will be up to them, the Legislative Assembly, to decide. One of the things that we want to continue is to ensure that championships have a healthy budget that allows them to hold those championships. And we believe that those budgeted amounts will continue, if not increase, over the next few years. And we're committed to that as a board. Another question that has come up is, it sounds like there's a lot more work that will be done by the office. So will there be an increase in office staff? Over the last few years, the BCSS office has had an equivalent of 4 full-time employees. Comparably speaking, it's less than other provinces, and just by way of comparison, Saskatchewan has 9 sports, about half of the number of athletes that BC does, and has the same level of staffing in their office. And Alberta, which has 12 sports and about 2/3 of our number of student athletes, has an additional full-time staff member, up to 5. And Ontario, which has 19 sports, so similar to ours, but that their office does not handle eligibility, has 7 full-time staff. And so it is our anticipation that should this governance model pass, that we will be hiring 1 additional person to bring our full-time equivalent staff up to 5. But I think it's really important that you understand that staff are not going to be running every championship. They will clearly be a part of the planning and work around the championships. We'll still require volunteers and leaders across the province to be involved. While BCSS will be more involved and will provide support and guidance for those volunteers, this organization will continue to be a volunteer-driven organization, and we will need all of you to maintain your interest and support of the sport experience for our kids.
Our last 2 questions here. One of them that we've heard from zones is, how will zones have their voices and concerns heard in the new structure? So one of the things that should be noted is that zones will hold 50% of the seats on the Legislative Assembly. So each zone, each of the 9 member zones will have 3 representatives. And any zone can bring forward motions to both the AGM and the APM. And so those are examples there where zones, they have a voice and they have the opportunity to bring motions forward. And those can be from their member schools. Zone representatives can be chosen however the zone decides to do so. So if they elect or if they appoint their representatives, so long as one is an administrator and all three aren't the same gender, it's up to the zone to make that determination. For athletic directors, this is a question that's come up quite a few times, is how will this new structure assist athletic directors in their roles? And this is a big one. We have a lot of turnover in our athletic directors each year, and new ADs. It's a challenge to find rules and find policies and get up to speed. And so, one of the things that's important here is that consistency and the transparency for sport-specific policies will not be in conflict with BC School Sports policies, and we'll have a consistent process for changing them. The BC School Sports Handbook will be the single place for all BC School Sports policies. And so that's something that is hopefully going to be will be a new thing if governance passes. We have an increased focus on AD and coach development, AD development through the CIAAA and coach development through some programs that we're looking at developing. And the focus on school sports. So we recognize that not all of our athletes have the Provincial Championships as the culmination of their season. So many of our athletes, local league and zone championship play is where it's focused, and our athletic directors will have some support in that as well. And then finally, should a school want to host a BC School Sports Championship, we have the ability now to have BC School Sports staff whose task it is, having specific sports that they deal with to assist and to move along the process of planning and implementation of that championship. So that brings us to the end of our Q&A. I'm going to turn it back over to Rick for some final thoughts.
Okay, so thanks very much for joining us, for listening to this, whatever you do. Appreciate all that you do. Thanks to Brent and Anne-Marie for being a part of this as well. And we're available as a board. We're a month away from the vote. If you have questions that arise, feel free to contact the office, contact us as board members, and we'd love to be engaged in dialogue with you over these next few weeks. We believe in this governance model. We believe that it's the best thing for athletes, student athletes in our province, and for you as ADs and coaches. And so we're confident that this is the right way forward. So thanks again for joining us in this Q&A.